Hi, Ritesh. Thank you so much for
Hi.
joining us today in our series of 60 Days, 60 Voices. This is an initiative game that's the Global Alliance for Mass Entrepreneurship has kickstarted, primarily as a learning and collaborative initiative. And the idea is through this process to be able to feed back into the ecosystem what challenges for small businesses are today impacted by COVID. But more importantly, how can we support recovery? I think relief is the focus now, but in a new normal, what does a business, small business especially, need? And I think, for me, everything I've read about you in the last day, I mean, you live in the world of entrepreneurs. For this conversation, while of course all kinds of entrepreneurs are important, I'd like you to keep the lens of the small entrepreneur and the small business front and center. So, Ritesh, I'd like you to tell us a little bit, as co-founder of Innov8, the idea of that, link it to perhaps small businesses and what it's done for them, and then perhaps segue into some of the challenges that you're seeing now that are immediate and urgent.
Thank you very much, Sandhya. I think this is a great initiative. I think the world needs more of advocacy and more of education in times like these. These are unprecedented times. We are actually traveling through untested waters. And in my professional history, I haven't seen anything as dire as this when it comes to choking of business continuity. So when it comes to, I believe that when it comes to the situation at hand, the biggest risk is for small and medium enterprises and is for very early stage startups do not have cash reserves to actually support. And being a part of a mission in where we support a lot of early stage entrepreneurs, we've seen that their business has been hit significantly. And because they go in from a month-on-month rolling system of cash management, they have been hit significantly because of this crisis. And we have in total now 30 centers pan India. We host almost more than 25,000 entrepreneurs on a daily basis in different parts of the country. And we've realized that after talking to a lot of them actually in the past 2 to 3 weeks, we've realized that their business has been significantly hit. And we will see even permanency closures for for a lot of small enterprises in the coming few months.
Thanks, Ritesh. You're right. None of us, I don't think, nobody living has seen anything quite like this. What are you doing as an organization? You've understood some of the initial challenges. What are you doing from a support perspective for these businesses?
So yes, as an organization, we as an organization are ourselves very vulnerable, because if you appreciate the idea of co-working, you would realize that we do not own any of the assets.
That's
All our assets are leased out. So now just imagine that if our business stops, if cash flow to us stops, what happens is that we are regularly losing cash. So what we have, if so a very interesting thing that we have done is, for the first time, we've collaborated as co-working industry and not as a company. So almost 95% of the market of co-working, which is controlled by around 32 players in the country, we have all come together to build something called IWA, Indian Workspaces Association. So we are working in and requesting the government to intervene to make sure this nascent early stage industry does not go through a turmoil. Because if this continues for more than 2 to 3 months, we will see significant closures of especially the non-funded co-working players, which will hit the economy in ways unimaginable. So as an organization, we are focusing on three things. The first one is advocacy and education. We are conducting a lot of webinars, we are conducting a lot of support section in practices, where we are telling entrepreneurs that how to manage this crisis, b how to make sure that you work remotely, what is the science of working remotely, and c how to over communicate with them that there will be business continuity once the lockdown goes down. So that is more on the verbal assurance section. uh, b on the fact that we realize that as small entrepreneurs they will not be able to pay their rents, so we are by case we are understanding the need it where we need to give relief to specific sections, especially early stage freelancers and early stage startup founders, to make sure that their burden is not increased by rentals because they have a contractual liability towards us. So making sure that we are empathetic towards them in times of distress. At the same time, our third focus is very it's very broad, but we are working to ensure that with the government we are sending them specific letters to address the fact that there should be deferment of certain regulatory payments, because if regulatory payments are not deferred as such to this, if you appreciate the crisis, the biggest crisis for small and medium entrepreneurs is managing their cash flows right now. At one end, their account receivables have been stopped. On the other hand, in their business continuity and cash continuity has stopped. But their costs of human resource, their costs of other costs of running the business are still intact. So we are requesting the government to make sure that they intervene at this point and help these small and medium enterprises.
Ritesh, I mean, as you were speaking, it hit me while I was asking you about challenges to other entrepreneurs. The point you raised was for you too, it's an existential challenge. And yet it has led to collaboration, which may not have happened within the whole co-working community before. But now through this crisis, you're coming together. You touched on the need and the support through empathy. And the third area you highlighted was advocacy with government. So those are really areas of support that you've spoken about. My third and final question, Ritesh, is game is an ecosystem enabler. For us, the game is everybody, every partner to be able to support businesses, especially small businesses, mass entrepreneurs to thrive and succeed. And today, more than ever, they need support. What can we do as an ecosystem? I suppose one of the things you will highlight, because you did start with that, is the advocacy piece, right? You see that as being front and center. But do you see other areas that different kinds of partners, not necessarily all co-working partners, or not necessarily all digital literacy partners, but just as an ecosystem of different people coming together? In fact, in a previous conversation I had before this, the person I was speaking to brought up the need for diversity coming together, different kinds of potential and ideas coming together. What do you see as an ecosystem doing together, or ways?
So firstly, big thanks to Game, because I was just going through what all Game does. Unfortunately, we do not have advocacy-led organizations that are focusing themselves on small enterprises. And the truth of the country today is 74.5% of country's human resource employment comes from small and medium enterprises, and only the remaining come from large enterprises. So I believe at this point in time, there is massive need for platforms like Game to make sure that small entrepreneurs are guided. And also we need to appreciate that these small entrepreneurs are not the most professional entrepreneurs when it comes to their backgrounds, or not the most wealthy ones. So they need, I believe one thing which can change everything is the fact that we do not need to support companies, we need to support industries. This is an existential crisis, and more people need to come and protect their industry. And I personally believe that when founders talk to other founders, magic happens. So what we've been doing is, for example, we have a strategy called the OWS strategy. O stands for over communication, W stands for building war rooms, and S stands for safety and sanitization. So this was our first three mantras for managing the COVID-19 crisis. And this has been now adopted by a lot of small enterprises that used to work out of Innov8. So we've seen that at developing the right practices, taking guidance from people who have been there, done that, and then formulating it into white papers, and then communicating them in different languages vernacularly through different voices across the country and across the distribution network of these small and medium enterprise is holders is extremely critical at this point in time. And I believe that, and I can empathize with the government that they might not be able to give relief to a lot of small and medium enterprises, but one thing which can be a massive change maker is voice and advocacy and voice, continuous advocacy and voice. I believe so we have a war room where we manage the situation every 4 hours, every 24 hours. I love the slogan 60 voices 60 days. This is beautiful. More and more ideas come when we collaborate. And I believe, do you know why Israel is one of the most innovative nations in the world? The biggest reason behind that is that they have been in the face of war for the past so many years. They've been in times of distress. Also, in times of distress, massive innovations happen because people need to change. परिवर्तन, जिसको हम हिंदी में परिवर्तन बोलते हैं, परिवर्तन दुनिया का नियम है. And that change, that evolution, we are all evolving, and that is the essence of small and medium enterprises. I believe that at small and medium enterprise founders, they are not very susceptible to change. So I think through more and more education by platforms like Game, we can really help them make sure that they really manage this crisis well.
That was so beautifully put, and I resonated that actually Game will resonate with a lot of things you said, but one of the most important things is during crisis, innovation happens. During distress, innovation happens. In fact, when we talk about the origins of Game or the idea of mass entrepreneurship, it goes back to Ned Phelps' book, Mass Flourishing, where he talks about when during recession, it was small entrepreneurs who came to the fore and created an economic uplift. So I feel I resonate deeply with that point. You also made the point of the voice of the entrepreneur needing to be heard and represented. You also made a point about access to information and dissemination of information. And that has come up as a consistent theme in every conversation we've had. And the last point, perhaps a thread that runs along, you spoke about the need for industries to come together. You said when founders communicate with each other, magic happens. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ritesh. I think this was a really good conversation. And I hope we continue to be connected, because the idea for these conversations is to go beyond conversations and to ensure that there's some change on the ground. Thank you for your time.
Would love to. Thank you. Thank you for the initiative.